Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we continue reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, text 15. Sarvendriya Gunabhasam,
Sarvendriya Gunabhasam,
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam,
Sarvendriya Vivarjitam,
Asaktam Sarva Pracheva,
Asatam Sarva Vichekeva,
Nirgunam Gunabhoktircha.
Nirguna Guna Bhaktircha. Translation. The Supersoul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached. Although he is the maintainer of all living beings, he transcends the modes of nature and at the same time he is the master of all the modes of material nature. Purport. The Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, doesn't have material senses. Like they have, actually the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditional life, they are covered with the material elements. And therefore, the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Sevastava Upanishad. In the verse Apani Padro Javanu Grahita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the super soul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows that we have done in the past, what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things, but his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. Bhagavad Gita also confirmed that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchitin Ananda Vigraha. He is full of opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially effective cannot understand the personality of Godhead.
So Krishna is continuing to speak about knowledge, and he's speaking about the super soul, the Paramatma. We heard yesterday, Krishna was saying there's the Atma and Paramatma in the heart. So there are two. So the Atma, he's gotten attached. He wants to enjoy the fruits of his activities. But the Paramatma, he's unattached. He does not get affected by the modes of nature. That this is the difference between God and us. That when we come to the material world, we get covered by the material energy. We start thinking we are the body. But God never thinks that he's the body. He completely remembers his transcendental position. Why? Because he's the owner of the material energy. So she cannot cover him. He's her controller. We say, oh, the universal energy, universal law. But who is the lawmaker? Who is the energetic? Whose energy is this? The universal energy. It's Krishna's. So Krishna is sometimes, he's called Nirguna. Nirguna, why is he called Nirguna? So Krishna, he has senses, but not material. He has spiritual senses. We souls also, we have spiritual senses, but now our spiritual senses are covered by this material body. So Krishna's senses are called Nirguna, means they are not covered, they are transcendental. Guna means material modes, but Krishna's senses are not covered. Our senses are covered by the material body. We think this material eyes is our eyes and this ears is our ears. But the soul has spiritual senses. But it's covered right now. But Krishna's senses never gets covered. That's why he's called Nirguna. Nirguna. So Prabhupada is quoting the Shvetashvatara Upanishad that it is saying that personality of Godhead has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever as sacrifice is offered to him. So Krishna's hands are not like our hands. Our hands have they're covered now. Our real hands are covered by this material hand. But Krishna's hand is not covered. And that's the reason when the yajna is happening, he can accept all the sacrifices. He is far, far away. But then when the yajnas are offered to him, he can accept whatever it is. So Krishna, he has no material eyes. He has eyes. He can see everything, but no material. He sees the past, present, and future. So he has transcendental eyes. He does not have material eyes. When they say Nirguna, it doesn't mean he doesn't have senses. It doesn't mean he doesn't have qualities. It means he has no material senses, no material qualities. The Paramatma is in our heart and he knows all that we have done in the past. He knows what we are doing now in the present, and he knows what is going to happen in the future. He knows everything. But nobody knows him. That's why there's a difference between God and us, God, he has complete knowledge, past, present, and future, but we can't even remember what we did yesterday. So the Supreme is said to have no legs, but it means he has no material legs. He has transcendental legs, and so he can travel anywhere. So his eyes, his hands, his legs, his ears, all his senses are transcendental. He has senses. It's not that he's impersonal. He has. And because he has senses and because we are part and parcel of the Lord, we also have senses. But our senses right now are covered by the material nature. But Krishna's senses never gets covered. The Paramatma senses never gets covered. That's the difference between God and us. That he never gets covered by the material energy. We get covered. So why? Because he's the owner of the material energy. So, and when Krishna comes, He's not forced like us to take birth in any, like we are never asked. We don't have to fill out a question, or nobody asks us, oh, which planet you want to be born in, which species, who you want your mother, father to be, what time do you want to born. Well, nobody asks us. We just find ourselves in this body. We are forced to accept a body. We cannot choose. So similar, but Krishna, his appearance is not like that. He chooses where he's going to appear, when he's going to appear, who his parents are going to be. So it shows he's not under the control of the material energy. He's above the material energy. He's the controller of the material energy. He comes by his spiritual energy. Very soon Janmashtami is coming up, the 6th of September. So when Krishna comes, he comes by his internal potency, spiritual energy. So Krishna has a form. We mistaken to say that God has no form. No, God has a form. His form is transcendental, Sat Chit Ananda, eternal form, a form which is full of knowledge, a form which is full of bliss. Is Satchidananda Vigraha. God has senses, spiritual senses. And he's full of all opulence. We find so many things. We find the sun, the moon. We find the minerals, the gold. We find the fruits, flowers. We find ourselves. Who does it all belong to? It all belongs to God. Who does the air belong to? Who does the water belong to? Who does the sun, moon? Who did they belong to? Who does this earth belong to? It all belongs to God. He's the one of full opulence. And then we may do research work, that there are so many intelligent people. We take so many tests to see whose IQ is better or something. Now, who's the most intelligent? God. No one is more intelligent than God. Then we see knowledge. Oh, how much someone knows. We may go for this competition or that competition. So somebody has more knowledge, somebody has more knowledge, somebody has more knowledge. But who has the most knowledge? God is the origin of all knowledge. Whatever we know is because He is telling us. That's why we know it. So no one is equal to or greater than God. And Prabhupada is pointing out that these are some of the symptoms of God. So we can understand that there is a difference between God and us. We can never become God. We are always part and parcel of God. Even after liberation, we continue to be part and parcel. As spirit souls, the spirit souls, we have our own senses. Like Krishna, he has his own senses. We have our own. The difference is when God comes to the material world, his senses don't get covered. Ours get covered by this material body. So, and all the Vedas say that God is always transcendental. Always. We are not able to see him. We are not able to um, see his face or his hands or legs, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have them. We can't even see the bacteria flying in front of us, but it doesn't mean the bacteria don't exist. We just don't have a suitable lens. So God's form is spiritual. Our spiritual eyes are covered right now with this material eyes. That's why we are not able to see him. That's why we have to clean. We have to clean our consciousness. We have to spiritualize our senses so that we will be able to see God face to face. And the process is devotional service, hearing from Bhagavatam, hearing from Bhagavad Gita, from the devotees, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So God has senses. Krishna has senses, and they are spiritual senses, not material. Bahir antascha bhutana.
Bahir antas kacha bhutanam.
Acharam charam evacha.
Acharat charam eva cha.
Sukshmatvat tad avigyeyam.
Suksmatmatam tad avidyayat.
Durastam chantike chatat.
Durastam chantike ketat. Translation. The Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is stubble, he is beyond the
He's
power of the
subtle
material sense.
because,
He's
I'm sorry,
subtle.
because he's subtle. Subtle, yeah.
Yeah, he's subtle. Yeah. He is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. In Vedic literature, we understand that Narayan, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present in both the spiritual and material world. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of Vedic literature. This you can say. I don't know how to say
Asino
in
duram, yeah, asino duram brajati
Asino
shayano
Duram.
yati sarvata. Asino duram brajati
Asino
shayano yati sarvata.
Sayano Yati Sarva. Oh. And
Katha
because he's
Upanishad
always
1, 2, 3.
uh, and because he's always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he's enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for Supreme Lord can see him always without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktiyata, Bhaktiyata Ananya Sakya.
So here Krishna is saying the Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all beings. So he is in our heart. And he's also in every atom of the universe. The Paramatma, he is there inside every atom of the universe. And that's why the atom can have its shape. And he's also sitting in our hearts. So Krishna, God, he's there in the spiritual world. He's also in the material world. Spiritual world is very far away. We go to the moon also, it takes so long to reach there. Then there are so many other planets in this material world, which are even further that we cannot even dream of reaching there. And the spiritual world is even farther away. So it's really far. But in spite of spiritual world being so far, Krishna is near to us. He is in our heart as Paramatma. He is in the atom of every atom of the universe. So all this is Vedic wisdom in the Vedic literature. So in Katha it is also said that he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, and we cannot understand how he's enjoying his full opulence. So what is God doing whole day? Like what we are doing, we have our routine. We wake up, we clean ourselves, we chant, we hear, and then we doing our of whatever work we need to do, whatever, cooking or cleaning or working in an office or whatever, sports or exercise, whatever. But what is God doing the whole day? He's a person, so he's also doing something. He's enjoying with his devotees. He's completely enjoying. We try to enjoy and then we work very hard to get some kind of enjoyment. But he is enjoying all the time, 24/7. He's enjoying his opulence. Everything belongs to him. He's enjoying with his devotees. He's playing with the gopas, the gopis, the peacocks, the cows. Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. God is eternal. It doesn't mean because we can't see him, he is not existing. No, Krishna right now is performing his pastimes in Golok Vrindavan as well as in the in material universe. Every planet, he's there. In every universe, he's there right now, in some planet or the other. And his pastimes are going on. So he's always enjoying, but we can't see. Why? Because our senses are material now. Our spiritual senses are covered. So we cannot see God. So then now, how can we understand God? The Vedas are telling us God exists, God has a form, Satchidananda form. He's having such beautiful pastimes, he's enjoying. Now, how can we see that? Our senses are material, so we are not able to see. So, by practicing Krishna consciousness, we will be able to see. By engaging in devotional service, we can see him constantly. We can see him everywhere, all the time. Lord Brahma says in the Brahma Samhita that Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, that one who has love for God can see God everywhere, every time. So love for God, we can revive it by, we begin by hearing and chanting. Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, offering prayers. That is the Nava Anga Bhakti. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying that he can be known only by devotional service. And that's how he's saying. He's saying, you want to know me? You engage in devotional service, then you'll be able to know me. You will be able to understand me. So if we want to revive this love with God, each of us have a loving relationship with God. So we need to revive this loving relationship with God. And we can do it by hearing and chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu.
Avibhaktam cha bhuteshu.
Vibhaktam eva cha sthitam.
Vibhaktam eva cha sitam.
Bhuta bhartar chatajneyam.
Bhuta bharte chatatajneyam.
Grasishnu prabhavishnu cha.
Grasisno prabhavishnuka. Translation. Although the super soul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Purport. The Lord is situated in purport. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the super soul. Does this mean that he has become divided? No, actually he is one. The example is given of the sun. The sun at the meridian is situated in its place. But if one goes for 5,000 miles in all directions and asks, where is the sun? Everyone will say that it is shining on his head. In the Vedic literature, the example is given to show that although he is undivided, he is situated as if divided. Also, it is said that in Vedic literature that one Vishnu is present everywhere by his omnipotence, just as the sun appears in many places to many persons. And the Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th chapter when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the various assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that in the form of time, he devours all. So also, he is the annihilator, the killer of all when there is creation. He develops all from the original state and the time of annihilation. He devours them. The Vedic hymns confirm that fact that he is the origin of all living entities and the rest of all. After creation, everything rests in his omnipotence, and after annihilation, everything again returns to rest on him. These are the confirmation of Vedic hymns. Yato va imani bhutani jayanti yena jatani jivanti yat prayanta abhisham visanti tad brahma tad vijinasava taterya Upanishad 3.1.
So now Paramatma is sitting in everyone's heart, we say, right? So that means how many Paramatmas are there? Paramatma is in your heart, my heart, everyone's heart. So how many Paramatmas are there? What do you think? Paramatma is only one. Just like the sun, wherever we go, we are in Panama, we are in India, or we are in Taiwan, we can see the sun. But we cannot say that this is Indian sun, this is Taiwanese sun, or this is Panamanian sun. The sun is the sun. And everyone will say, oh, the sun is right here above my head. I can see the sun. Similarly, the Paramatma is like that. He's in everyone's heart, but Paramatma is one. He's not divided. We individual souls, we are so many, unlimited number of individual souls, but Paramatma is one. So this is the example given in the Vedas to make us understand the position of Paramatma. We say God is omnipresent. We say God is omnipotent. So he's omnipresent by his Paramatma feature. He's everywhere, inside every atom of the universe, inside our heart. We say God is omnipotent. Everything belongs to him. All are his energy. But although everything belongs to him, he maintains everything. There is a time for this material creation. He creates it for some time, maintains it, and then annihilates it. We hear in detail about this, especially in the first three cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, which dealing with the topics of creation, that how Mahavishnu is lying down on the causal ocean. From his body, so many unlimited number of universes are coming. Then how he's entering into each universe as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And from this Garbhodakshai Vishnu, from his navel, how Lord Brahma is coming. And then how this Garbhodakshai Vishnu is entering again into the atom, every atom of the universe, and also in the heart of all the living entities, which are put inside the universe by Mahavishnu. And who are this Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu? They are expansions of Krishna. So Krishna, he is doing this, creating, maintaining, and annihilating. Krishna says, time I am, and I've come to kill everyone, he says to Arjuna. So with time, Krishna kills us all. When there is time, Krishna creates the material world, he maintains it, and then when it's time, he annihilates it. But the material energy is eternal. It's not that when there's annihilation of the material creation, that the energy does not exist. No, material energy is eternal. She's Krishna's energy. She's God's energy. God is eternal. So material energy is eternal. Similarly, we souls, it doesn't mean that when there's destruction, the souls don't exist. No, we exist. We are eternal. We are never going to die. So all this is explained in the Vedic literatures. This is all Vedic knowledge. Jyotisham apita jyotis.
Jyotisam apita jyotis.
Tamasa param uchyate.
Tamasa param uchyate.
Jnanam gyeyam gyanagamyam.
Jnanam yenam gyanagamyam.
Hridhi sarvasya vishtitam.
Hidi Savyasam Visitam. Translation. He is the source of light and all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Purport. The super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects like the sun, moon, and stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom, there is no need of sun or moon because of the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is here. In the material world, that Brahma Jyoti, the Lord's spiritual effulgence, is covered by the Mahatattva, the material elements. Therefore, in the material world, we require the assistance of sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need of such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature, Aditya Varnam, Tamasa Parasar, Sevastar Upanishad 3.8. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far beyond the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahma is concentrated transcendental knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to the spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra says Tam Ha Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasam Mumuskur Ve Saranam Aham Pradap Prapadai. One must surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Tam eva viditavati mrityam eti. Only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. Sevastra Upanishad 3.8. He is situated in everyone's heart as the supreme controller. The supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere, and this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the super soul, must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Sevastarva Upanishad. Sarvasya Prabhum Isana Sarvasya Saranam Brahat Tat. That supreme personality of Godhead, Super Soul, is the Prabhu or master of all living entities. Therefore, he is ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the supreme Super Soul and the individual soul are always different.
So Krishna is again trying. I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Hmm?
There's more.
It finishes here, no? So they're always different. What more is there?
I thought I have to read more, yeah.
Okay. But that finishes the purport, right? Yeah. All right. So Krishna, now this light, the sun, the moon, there's light coming. Where is this light coming from? So Krishna is explaining that all the light is coming from his body. The original light, the Brahma Jyoti, where is it coming from? It's coming from Krishna's own body. Krishna has a body, a personal form. And from this form is coming the Brahma Jyoti. And the entire creation is situated on this Brahma Jyoti. Then what about the material world? So everywhere, the spiritual sky is all bright. But then why the material world is so dark? Because one portion of this Brahma Jyoti gets covered by the Mahatattva. And this is where the material world is created. And because it's covered by the Mahatattva, this material world becomes dark. And there becomes a necessity for the sun and the moon. Without the sun, we won't be able to see anything. Now then we will say, oh, but we will generate electricity by water or something. But the original source of energy here in the material world is the sun. Even the scientists say without the sun, we won't be able to exist. So, but in the spiritual world, there is no need of sun and moon because it's already effulgent. It's already, the light is coming from Krishna's body. Just like we have experience in our houses, we have the light. We see the light, but we see where's the light coming from? It's coming from the light bulb. So similarly, this Brahman, where is this Brahman coming from? It's coming from Krishna's form. Krishna is a transcendental form. So this Brahman is Krishna's effulgence, spiritual effulgence. It's the spiritual effulgence of God, the Brahman. And then in the spiritual world, there is no need of sun and moon because it's all bright. But yet, sun and moon exist. Why? For the sake of decoration, for the sake of pastime. It looks good. But not as a necessity, like here in the material world. No sun, we all dead. But the spiritual world, they exist only for the sake of pastimes. So it's different, the spiritual world and the material world. And we should somehow have a desire. I want to go to the spiritual world. There's a spiritual sky with so many planets, just as there's the material sky and so many planets. There's the spiritual sky, so many planets. And in every of this spiritual planet, there is an expansion of Krishna. One of his Vishnu forms is there, four-armed. And every of this spiritual planet. And in the highest planet of the spiritual sky, Golok Vrindavan, Krishna personally lives there. God lives there in Golok Vrindavan. So the Vedic knowledge, where do we get the Vedic knowledge from? It's spoken by Krishna. He's the original speaker of the Vedas. Srila Vyasadeva, first canto of Bhagavatam, first chapter, first verse, he says, Tene Brahma Hridaya Ya Adi Kavaye. He says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then in the verse, he says, Tene Brahma Hridaya Ya Adi Kavaye. That Krishna is the original God and he's the original speaker of the Vedas. Krishna spoke the Vedas to Brahmaji. So Vedic knowledge is transcendental, is spoken by God. So it's not material. So God's knowledge is transcendental knowledge, spiritual knowledge. So if we at all want to go to the spiritual world, all this information is given. It is here. We are hearing in Bhagavad Gita, there is in Srimad Bhagavatam, and also by the Paramatma in our heart. Krishna is, God is in our heart as Paramatma. Krishna is in our heart as Paramatma. And he, if we somehow have the desire, Krishna gives us the knowledge by how we can go there. So the Vedas, Shvateshvatara Upanishad 6.18 says that if we at all want liberation, means we want to get out of this material world, we have to surrender to Krishna. We don't have to become Krishna. We can never become Krishna. We can never become God. What we have to do is surrender to God. If we want liberation, Krishna says that ye yathamam prapadyante mayam etam tarantite, that those who surrender unto me can very easily cross beyond this material world. So if we at all want liberation from this material world, we want to go to the spiritual world, we need to surrender to Krishna, surrender to God. Krishna also says, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya. He says in 18th chapter, that surrender unto me. He's repeating it. He's saying, come back home. He's giving us the knowledge of the spiritual world. He's saying, come and live with me in the spiritual world. So what is the goal of all Vedic knowledge is to understand Krishna. Shvateshwara Upanishad, Prabhupada is quoting that only by knowing God can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. So we are in this cycle of birth and death. If we at all want to get out of this cycle, we need to know God. We need to understand God. So Krishna, he is in our heart. He is the Paramatma. And he has his hands and legs everywhere. But the individual soul, our hands and legs are not everywhere. Our hands and legs are only here with us only. Although they are covered right now, our spiritual hands and legs are covered by the material hands and legs, but they are not everywhere. We can just do whatever, how much ever our hand can reach. That's all. Now we have gadgets to extend, to pick up things from far away, but how much ever the gadget can help us then. Krishna's hands and legs are everywhere. Everywhere, spiritual world, material world, everywhere. So Krishna, God, Paramatma, he's the Prabhu. He's the master of all of us. He's our ultimate shelter. We try to search for one shelter after another and after another. The supreme shelter is God, is the Paramatma, is Krishna. So there is a difference between us and God, the Jivatma, Paramatma, the Brahman, the Parabrahman. That this is the difference that we need to understand, that we can never become God, but we are always part and parcel of God. And all the Vedas are trying to help us understand that we have a loving relationship with God. In the spiritual world, we have a loving relationship with God. We can see Him face to face. We can play with Him. We can speak to Him. So we should somehow or the other get a desire to go there to the spiritual world. And so for this, we continue to hear and continue to chant. Hearing and chanting. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam.
Iti kesham tata janam.
Neyam choktam samasata.
Neyam koktam samasata.
Madbhakta etad vignaya.
Madbhakta etad vignaya.
Madbhava yopapadyate.
Madbhavya yopapatatye. Translation. Thus the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Purport. The Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. The knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called Vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monist says that at the ultimate state, there are three items become one, but the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge means understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness. But as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7, beginning from Mahabhutani and continuing through Caitana Drita, analyze the material elements and certain manifestations of the symptoms of life. These combine and form the body or the field of activities, and verses 8 through 12 from Amantivam through Tattva Janasa Darsanam describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the supersoul. The verse 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Mat Param and continuing through Hirdi Sarvasya Visitam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord or the Supreme Super Soul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the super soul. It is specially described that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So, for these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired results.
So Krishna is saying that only devotees can understand the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Knowledge, who's the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowing. Who's the knower? Who is the knowable? And what is the process? And this is science of knowledge, Vigyan. When we can apply the knowledge, that becomes science. So, perfect knowledge. What is perfect knowledge? And who is able to understand? Is only the pure devotees. Others are not able to understand. It's not that everything is one. No, it's not that in the ultimate issue, everything is one, only oneness. No, because the pure devotees have the proper knowledge that there is the knower, there's the knowable, and there is a process of knowing. There are three: the knower, the knowable, and process of knowing. So the more we engage in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, the more we will be able to realize the real knowledge, the truth. So Prabhupada is explaining that knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. That is knowledge. To understand that I am spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. I have a loving relationship with Krishna, and the way I can revive that relationship or be situated in that relationship is by engaging in devotional service. And the goal is to revive our love for Krishna. Prema Pamartha Maha. So then Prabhupada is saying that 6 to 7, they analyze the material elements. We saw that, that there are the 24 material elements, and then there's the 6 manifestation that, okay, there's birth, and there's staying for some time, growing, then getting some byproducts, then starts dwindling, then vanishes. And then 8 to 12, Krishna describes about humility, amanitvam, through tattva gyartha darshanam, that how to understand. What's the process of understanding the soul and the super soul? Beginning from humility. If we can just understand that I need to surrender to God, I am not God. If we can become humble in front of God, then we will be able to receive this knowledge. We'll be able to understand this knowledge. Then we will be able to understand, oh, I'm not God, I'm the soul, and there is God, the super soul. Then Prabhupada is continuing that the other verses 13 to 18, they describe the soul and the super soul. God and we are the spirit souls, and the super soul is God, Paramatma. So 3 items: field of activity, that's the body, Kshetra. This body is the Kshetra. The process of understanding, and both the soul and super soul. We heard this. We understood that the body is the field of activity. Then there is the soul, there is the super soul. And what's the process of understanding? That we have to surrender to God. We have to engage in devotional service and become humble, clean, like all those processes there. So the pure devotees can understand this knowledge clearly. The pure devotees can understand that there's a process of knowledge, that's devotional service, there is the soul, and there is super soul. So if we want to know the truth, we need to engage in devotional service, the absolute truth. So, but by really studying Bhagavad Gita, following Krishna's instruction, one can become a pure devotee, and then one can revive the spiritual nature. God is spiritual nature. We can revive our own spiritual nature also. We are spirit souls. We have our spiritual senses. We have our spiritual body. We simply have to revive it by studying Bhagavatam, studying Bhagavad Gita from the devotees and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Bhagavad Gita, many people read it. Many people, different walks of life, different philosophers, different people who are inquisitive, different people who are searching for knowledge, read the Bhagavad Gita. But who can actually understand the Bhagavad Gita is the devotee. The devotee can actually understand Bhagavad Gita. That is what Krishna is saying. Because Krishna reveals the real knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to the devotee. So Krishna is saying, engage in devotional service, and this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, I will reveal it to you from inside. Krishna is Paramatma in our heart, and he can reveal the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. But what do? We have to hear from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, from the devotees, not from the professional reciters. Hear from the devotees, because the devotee can reveal Krishna to us. And continue to chant. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Then we will be able to understand what is Bhagavad Gita. Is that okay? Okay, so let's stop here today. Thank you so much for listening and joining. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.